All right, today we live in a world that is awash with advice about technology, about how to use the internet, about AI tips, about how to spend less time on the internet, how to find interesting stuff on the internet, all this stuff. We're washing all this advice. And here's my argument. I'm convinced that we're neglecting the best guide to using the internet, which is the book of Proverbs. So, and it's something that I'll be honest, Ben, I'd never thought about connecting those two, the book of Proverbs and the internet. And
you never thought about thinking about the Bible as you've been on the internet. Got it.
Maybe that's been my problem about a number of things. But because you have this ancient text that's like 3,000 years old.
Yeah.
Written, 3,000 years before the rise of the internet. And then you've got the internet. And often my assumption is, well, that book is 3,000 years old. It's got nothing to say about this thing that just was created in the last 100 years.
Right.
But before we jump in, so that's where we're going. Before we jump in, Ben, I want to know, is there a random internet site that you spend too much time on? We're just going to have a time of confession before we jump in.
It probably would have to be something surrounding Philadelphia sports.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be a daily occurrence, whether in anger or in delusional celebration. Yeah, checking up on sports and on the NFL specifically. Roto World's a big one for me.
What
NFL player news? Yes.
What is Roto World? What is that?
It's just a sports news site.
Okay. Yeah, I'm out of the loop, man. But yeah, I think the mix of anger, vitriol, hope, and kind of raucous celebration is Philadelphia sports. So that doesn't.
That's true.
So you're gonna have a number of applications, Ben. I'm gonna
bring all of those things out on this podcast: anger, vitriol. So forth, yeah.
We're going to cover everything. So that's good. So it's a good place to be. Mine would probably be one of two things. Either ESPN FC, so the ESPN soccer page, because that's my Saturday morning ritual. Or recently, my brother-in-law has gotten me into NASCAR, which is a very unexpected left turn for me.
So we're appealing to a young demographic right now, I think.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything the kids are on right now, that's pretty much what we're on, the Tic Tac or whatever the kids are calling it. I'm just kidding. I know what it's called. So here's what we're going to do. When we're on the internet, even if you're old people like me and Ben, right, you are faced with a variety of issues, temptations, and everybody is shouting for attention, right? That is one thing we all agree about the internet, is that every website is trying to keep you on that website as long as possible so they can get your money, get views, get clicks, all that stuff. So everybody's fighting for attention. And that's actually what you find is the setting of the book of Proverbs, strangely enough. So in the book of Proverbs, you find the opening is essentially wisdom calling out in the middle of a busy marketplace saying, listen to me, listen to me. The challenge is there's a bunch of other stuff going on in the marketplace. What's the busiest place out where you are, Ben, where you're like, you go and it's just going to be mobbed with people?
I live out in the middle of nowhere, so there isn't much like that around here.
There's not like a big Amish rave or something,
There are those, but I've never been invited.
Well, like in the Philly area, I think of like Reading Terminal, what's it called? Reading Station, where it's like you got all these food booths, you got people moving in and out, you've got signs, you've got lights, you've got all this stuff. And so imagine you're in that market and then in the corner, there's somebody yelling, which wouldn't be unusual for Philadelphia, but you've got somebody yelling. And yet the tragedy is most people just walk by, right? That's actually the setting of the book of Proverbs. So here's what I want to do. I want to walk through the characters of Proverbs and contrast them with that voice, the voice of wisdom, and hopefully give people some handles, give us some handles for how to think about the internet and the voices we hear and how to evaluate them. Because a lot of times we would not think of looking at a website and going, oh, does this remind me of anything in the book of Proverbs? That's, that's not the case.
Yeah.
And yet
I think you're right.
it's ancient wisdom that is constantly applicable. So, any comments on that, Ben, before we jump in?
No, go for it.
Okay, so first thing we've got to do is define wisdom. And I think it's important because when we think of wisdom, often we think of intelligence, right? Intelligence just means like how smart you are. But that's not the same as what we find in wisdom in the Bible. My favorite definition of wisdom is the skill in the art of godly living, which is sort of a Bruce Waltke take. And
there's a lot of smart people who are not wise.
Yes, I was going to say there's extremely intelligent people who have no wisdom, or people who score high on an IQ test and do not have any wisdom. And wisdom is personified as as a woman in Proverbs, but this divine attribute of God's wisdom. So she is, because people get confused by this, she's not God. She's a poetic personification of this attribute and virtue. And the youth is this person who's basically at a crossroads of like, here's the voice of wisdom over here, and here's the voice of everyone else. And do you remember the little, I forget what cartoon it is, the little angel and devil on the shoulder?
Yeah, I don't know about the specific cartoon.
Is that like Bugs Bunny or something like that? I know it's in The Emperor's New Groove, but you get the two characters.
We'll go with that.
And this is my hot take of the podcast. I think that's actually from the book of Proverbs, because you essentially have this youth in the middle and wisdom's talking to him on one side and all these other voices are talking to him on the other. And the father is trying to go, who are you going to listen to? Right. So yeah, that's a lot more we could say. I'd recommend the work of Waltke and Kidner, their commentary on Proverbs. Longman has been really helpful to me on Proverbs. And a lot more to dig in there. But I want to make sure we jump into these characters. So here we go. Ben, do you want to take us into the first character in the characters to watch out for, the collection of fools, and read the relevant verse there?
Yeah. So Proverbs 26:11. Like a dog that returns to his vomit is a fool who repeats his folly.
Yeah. So obviously you're like, whoa, okay. It's not the kind of thing I would expect in the Bible. but the thing,
relatable.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And the thing I appreciate is you see repeatedly, I didn't do a word search on this, but how many times does the word fool occur in the book of Proverbs? Over and over. And the great thing about Proverbs is it's a rich tapestry of fools, not just a two-dimensional character. It shows foolishness in all of its dimensions. And so you have kind of this sliding scale in some ways. You've got the simple, who just don't know much, positive or negative, and just don't have any skill in the art of living. Then you've got the dull, who they should hear wisdom, but they don't, and intentionally ignore it. Then you've got the brutish, or the brutish is probably the best word there, meaning the people who buck against wisdom. And then you've got the godless, who are like actively saying, no, I don't want anything to do with the things of the Lord. And so you get this sort of spectrum from, I just don't know. I haven't actually sat and listened to wisdom. And a lot of my mistakes are because I just haven't listened. I'm not listening particularly to the voices of the world. But I have no skill in the art of godly living, all the way to the far end, where you just get hardened in your heart and you don't want to listen to God. And in fact, you're actively rejecting the things of God.
So the fool says in his heart, there is no God.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where you end, right? You end at the fool says in his heart, there is no God. And it's an active decision to act as if the God is not in the picture of their life at all.
I think another way that that Proverbs puts it simply is a fool is somebody who is not open to input.
Okay, yeah.
Which means, sadly, all of us can fit that description from time to time.
Yeah. Well, especially corrective input. Any input that is what we do not like, or we're very open to input when it comes to agreeing with us. And
yeah,
I was listening to an interview with somebody from a social media company that they found that if in your algorithms of social media feeds, if they put in views that don't align with your own, you're actually less likely to keep returning because they don't like it.
Yeah.
And so instead, they've discovered if they figure out what you think and then can feed you stuff that is what you think. And that's why everybody, when they go on the internet, spoiler alert, you think everyone agrees with you.
Right.
Because that's what you're getting fed. It's like, oh, let's find all the people. So what comes to mind in terms of the internet? For what part of the internet would this be, do you think, Ben? The collection of fools?
Well, it'd be hard to find a part of the internet where there isn't a collection of fools, but social media certainly is right up there as the primary culprit when it comes to what you're describing. And what you're describing as well in the spectrum of what it means to be a fool in Proverbs means that very, very smart, celebrated people can and many times are fools.
Yep. Yeah, just because somebody's got a doctorate in front of their name or because they have a lot of followers, which is even sometimes more sort of attraction, because they're big, because they pull a lot of views, doesn't mean that you should listen to them. And I think that's one of the most important things Proverbs says right up front. Don't listen to everybody in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Not every guy yelling in Reading Market deserves a hearing. And that's the first one. All right. So take us to the second one then, bro.
So the second one is the strange woman, which has lots of relevance. Proverbs 7:21 and following says, with much seductive speech, she persuades him. With her smooth talk, she compels him. All at once, he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter.
Okay, yeah. And obviously, remember, this is a dad instructing a son. So it's primarily, it's not like men can't lead people into sin as well. But basically, you're talking to a young man and the dad is saying, son, there are people out there that will seek to lead you astray. And I love that verse you just read, Ben, because it says, with her smooth talk, she compels him.
Right.
Meaning, like, there is a natural drift, a human sinful drift downward in those moments. And then it also has the tragic end as an ox goes to the slaughter, meaning it ends in death and destruction. And so, I mean, give us some examples.
And it seems maybe, almost innocent.
Sure.
Sure. And in its attractions. I mean, the examples are sadly all over the place and obvious. I mean, you get on the internet, there is a constant barrage. I mean, no matter where you go, seemingly, whether it be news sites and little ads on the side or social media offering up things on algorithms, that we, as Christians, we could very easily say, yeah, that's probably not for me. But packaged in ways that aren't necessarily aggressive. They're just, they appeal to a sort of sensuality, and so often it's easy, not just men, but increasingly women as well, to click. Not doesn't seem that big of a deal. Smooth talk, there's this compelling, and so before you know it, you're in the middle of something disastrous on your computer screen.
Hmm. Well,
And it's
and
everywhere. I mean, it's
yeah.
whether it be the world of music or movies or I mean, it's just a constantly present when one gets on the internet.
Well, and the challenge is the smoothness of how quickly you can go from desire to seeing something inappropriate is where in previous generations there was a lot of friction. If you
Mm,
wanted to view something sinful, it took a lot more effort in a sense. You had
right.
to make a plan, you had to leave your house, you had to go somewhere bad, or you had to go to a store, or you had to, you know, there were lots of friction steps in between you and that thing. But our world has made it so easy. It's essentially like, well, let's remove all the friction of what it
Yeah.
takes to get there and present it right to you. Um, Now, can I bring up something, Ben, that is maybe something that people are not tracking? Because I think majority of our audience would be going, okay, yeah, I know the worst of the worst sites. I shouldn't be going there. But
Right.
I'm also interested in going, okay, the dad is also saying, I think it's in was it in Proverbs 5 where he basically says, don't go down to the street or don't go down the street where this forbidden woman lives
Yeah. Right.
because it's almost like he's saying, look, don't even get into that part of town, son, if you know somebody is there that could lead you into sin. And I think while many Christians would go, it's bad to go to that woman's house, quote unquote, digitally. I still don't mind being in her neighborhood, hoping to catch a glimpse. Or I still,
Hmm.
maybe if I'm walking by, I'll see her or something like that. And so, yeah, I think you started to reference that. But would there be any of those categories of being in the neighborhood that we need to be careful of?
Yeah. It. I think that the wise Christian is attentive to the reality when online that there are going to be uh, a constant barrage of forces looking to siphon you toward the things that we would,
Mhm.
you know, we would all agree, of course, we shouldn't be going to, sites that feature pornography and so forth. Uh, but it could be as simple as an ad for any number of things, and it's just one click and one click and one click, and before you know it, you're down the street and you're in somewhere that you didn't initially plan to go. And it's important to think about this because we have a great capacity for self deception in this as well, where we
Mhm.
can justify, rationalize. I think Proverbs is saying very, very clearly, wisdom sometimes the question is asked, well, how close can I get to the edge of things before I'm actually engaging in sin? The wisdom of Proverbs is saying, get away from the edge. That is not for you to
Mhm.
test. Stay far
Mhm.
away. Uh, or we might just simply say, err on the side of caution.
Mhm.
Run from any hint of this sort of thing because um, the self-confident Christian who thinks that they can just get online and interact with a world that is those loud voices that are making appeals without ending up somewhere they don't want to go is foolish, actually.
Yeah. Well, and two categories I'd bring up that I think we got to be cautious of is that are often not sort of we're not as aware of. One of them would be actually in fiction or fantasy, romantasy. Romance fantasy has become the fastest growing genre of the last number of years,
Yeah,
and the increasing acceptance, I think, by Christians of explicit content, even in books, um, that are that they would, you would say, Ben, if you saw that portrayed on a screen, it would absolutely be inappropriate.
right.
And yet it's okay somehow because it's more, well, it's just fiction, it's just my imagination or whatever, which I think, okay, at the very least is you, and you might say, well, I might skip over that page or two, but you're going down the street, like you're right there. And Song of Solomon, in another section of advice to young men and women, says, do not wake love. Don't be in a place where you're stirring up desires for other people or things that you can't fulfill and that you aren't meant to fulfill. And it's unwise. And so that V1 is it, just these, I would say, they always use euphemisms. We're really good at euphemisms to hide what we're actually doing, but like
Sure.
spicy
Yeah.
literature is kind of the term now. That's one thing. Second thing is just whatever is popular on Netflix or HBO or whatever. I think a lot of Christians would never turn on, say, a pornographic site and just scroll through it after work, but they would very easily just jump on Netflix or HBO or whatever, start a show, no idea what's in it, high likelihood of nudity and other content, and just expose themselves and think, oh, it's not going to be a big deal. And so I think I would just say
Yeah.
use caution, both with your reading diet and your entertainment.
And just to pull on the string a little bit more before we move to the next category, the reality is that wisdom can look foolish to the world and often will, biblical wisdom.
That's good, man.
And so avoiding, not even a hint, as a category, cultivating an attentiveness and alertness with an understanding that there is a barrage of this happening. That might look like you not maybe it's just getting off of all kinds of sites that others would think like, well, that's silly. What you can't go on that site, you can't do that thing, you can't watch that show, and to simply say no, because I'm pursuing wisdom, and so I care more about what God says in this regard than I do about the world and its acceptance of, and conversations about whatever's popular and going on the internet at any given time.
Mm-hmm. And let me just say, Bob Coughlin, our director of music, has this great phrase about music, but I think it applies here as well when it comes to, but I really want to watch that content. I really want to see that show. I really want to watch that movie. He would say just about music that has sinful elements. He would just say there is plenty of music to listen to without that. The reality is we're awash in content, from the last 50 years. And if you're going, man, I can't live unless I see this show everyone's talking about, I would say, bro, you need to back up. We need to back up a little bit. And let me just say, I'm very susceptible to this. I love film. I love TV. I love the music stuff.
Yeah.
And there are times where I just think, oh my gosh, I love that director, or I love that thing, or I love that, the concept. I would love to see this writer's treatment of that concept. And I just have to go, you know what? I got to listen to Bob again. I got to back up and go, there is plenty of content, Ricky. You can, as I am now, just rewatch NCIS like a retired person, or go back or go back to whatever. And there's shows I'm still discovering, and they're great. And I think it's just, hey, there's plenty of stuff. You don't have to do it. So, all right, Ben, take us to the next one then.
The next one is the mocker, the scoffer. So Proverbs 9:7 and following says, whoever corrects a scoffer gets himself abuse, and he who reproves a wicked man incurs injury. Do not reprove a scoffer, or he will hate you. This seems very relevant when talking about the internet.
Does this sound like anybody that you've ever heard on the internet, Ben?
It sounds like everybody I've heard on the internet, it seems like.
Yeah, I'm not a Reddit guy, but somebody was telling me recently about the popularity of Reddit, where people go on and they'll answer questions, and essentially they'll also just put up stuff and mock it. And I realize our culture has a currency of whoever can be the most cutting, make the most, insightful scoff of a thing. Just recently in the U.S., there was a big, I don't even know what it is, some kind of big party at the Met that I didn't even see any of the original content. I just saw content of people making fun of people's dresses or clothes or whatever, and some NFL games, everybody's scoffing, some presidential person does this, everybody's scoffing. And it's kind of a currency. It's kind of a social currency of who can be the funniest, the most cutting. And I think the reality is there's a part of us that appeals to us about that, if we're honest.
Yeah.
And We want to go, oh man, that got him. Especially if it's making fun of people we don't like. We're
Yeah.
happy to join the crowd there. And I think Proverbs would say, be careful. Um, Scoffing, that picture of like, don't reprove a scoffer, he will hate you. It's almost like those who are mockers and scoffers are almost radioactive and are toxic, like in a chemical sense. Like getting too close, you're gonna get burned and hurt. And so don't think you can just sidle up next to them and be fine.
Well, Ricky, because we're friends, that we're not talking about the kind of loving mockery that happens in friendly conversations.
No.
That would be a hallmark, for instance, of Sovereign Grace gatherings of
Yeah.
pastors.
Yeah.
Because we don't take ourselves seriously, we trust and we like to have a good time with one another. Um, what's extraordinary is to see what is justified by Christians, so called, on social media, for instance, in this regard, when it comes to mocking and scoffing. It's like, no, it's that this person is just being based,
Yeah.
and there's actually sinful mocking and scoffing happening in the name of, full-throated masculine, Christianity, or whatever you want to call it, that we are not to engage in. And uh, I think we are wise to be careful that we don't find ourselves inhaling the spirit of the age and putting ourselves in that category uh, of the mocker or the scoffer.
Yeah, and I think it's at very least it's a caution light that should go up, because I think for many of us we just don't even have a category that it might be too far, that it might be ungodly, that it might be, because you could say, well, I'm I'm just mocking evil like the prophets
Yeah.
did in the
Pro-
Old Testament.
yes,
But it'd be
of the
like,
prophets
okay,
of Baal or
yeah, but
whatever.
okay,
And so
but
that,
guys,
okay, there's a category.
there's a category for that. But do you have a category of what sinful mockery is? Have you looked at Proverbs and honestly gone, hey man, do I see any of myself in this?
Yeah,
So
good question.
I think that's one. All right, let's keep moving. Next one.
The sluggard.
Oh, I don't like this one, Ben.
No, nobody likes the sluggard because so often, so many of us can see something of the sluggard in our lives. Proverbs 6:9 and following says, "How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber."
Man. Yeah, sluggard is actually very common, a very much more common character
And the
in
internet wants to
Proverbs.
serve you in this regard. They are eager to
Yes.
serve. There's so many people eager to serve you, serve the inner sluggard.
Yeah. It's funny, if you've gone through the Las Vegas airport, there's all these slot machines, right? That
Mm.
people are pulling because gambling is legal there. Where I read another social media interview where the guy said that actually social media and a lot of the internet works the same way that a slot machine does. Is that every once
Yes,
in a while you stumble
literally.
across something that delights you, and it keeps you coming back for more and more and more. And uh, and I think the tragedy for Christians is not just that we're wasting time, because we could say like, well, what's the big deal? Why is that a problem? Well, I think the problem isn't just that we're wasting time. It's that we're neglecting godly priorities that we should
Right.
be pursuing. Right. And so even in the New Testament, Paul rebukes some people who are not working, not just
Mm.
for not working, but saying, I want you to work so you have something to share with those in need. Meaning you're meant to be productive. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't rest or you shouldn't have a day of rest and worship or things
Yeah,
like
we're
that.
not
But
against leisure.
right, we're not against that. We enjoy a lot of stuff. But I think that the challenge is that often, and CJ made this observation years ago in his book on productivity, that we often give ourselves a pass in the West because everybody's always saying, well, I'm so busy. I'm so busy.
Mm.
This is just a little break. I just need this little break on the internet because I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Um, and what CJ points out is sometimes our busyness even is actually us neglecting godly biblical priorities. You know,
Yeah.
it's like I know I need to have a conversation with one of my sons that's corrective, that I got to talk about something with him. And I would really rather not. So I'd rather research, plants to fill this one spot in our backyard. And if somebody
Mm.
looked at me, they'd be like, "Oh, well, he's just serving his family. He's just picking some plants out." Like, no, I'm actually just avoiding a conversation I need to have. And I'm sure you've never dealt with this, Ben.
Well, yeah. Again, we're not talking about like checking the Phillies score or that sort of thing. I think one of the more convicting. I'm not sure why why at least on Apple they have a notification that pops up weekly, and it says, "Here's how much time you spent a day looking at the screen."
Yep.
Um, and uh, and I remember when that first came up the first time a few years ago, and I was fairly startled um, by what was revealed there, and I was convicted by by that notification of how much time I spent on the internet. So I decided to take action
Yeah.
and be proactive, and so I turned off that notification. I no longer receive it, and my life is just so much better now.
I didn't know you could turn it off. I
Oh
need you
yes,
to
you can
show me how to
yeah,
do that.
that's the takeaway. No, it's you talked about
Uh,
the slot machine thing. In reality, it's all over the place. You can easily find the information. The social media companies are hiring people from that world to create products and features in products, especially in things like social media, to compel you to never log off. Even the notification button was this ingenious invention that keeps you interested. Oh, well, I have a notification. Oh, my friend looked at something. Let me click on that, and that sort of thing. And so, yeah, we're wise to be aware that these companies are not our friends, as it has been said. These free products, for instance, with social media, if the product is free, then you are the product.
yeah.
And so they have a vested interest in keeping you on social media, wasting your time, feeding the inner sluggard where there's lots of perhaps social media activity, but nothing of productivity actually happening.
Yeah. And I think it's something that we cannot escape. And so we have got to be good at self-control, and we've got to be good at pursuing the godly priorities that the Lord set in front of us. And then I would even just say being intentional about leisure and restful activities, and not just giving ourselves to stuff that has no profitability long term in our lives, our families, that kind of thing. So I think
I
it's
think
a
one more thing. I think it's wisdom as well to have a category for some of us. We might need to cut it off. It isn't
oh, right,
necessary for us
right.
in our daily lives.
Yeah,
It
it's not
can
a
be desirable.
requirement to be
No,
alive
you don't.
today that you have to be on social media or have to be on certain websites. I mean, we have a guy in our church, one of our staff members, a guy who's about to be ordained, and he just doesn't have social media. He just
Yeah.
he made the call years ago. Basically, I've got priorities. I don't know if I have enough self-control to navigate this world well. I'm just not going to do it. And he just
Yeah.
opted out. And he does seem relatively happy. So I don't I don't
Yeah,
think he's
what a
suffering.
blessed life. Yeah, we're not. I mean, we're not in any way trying to insinuate that there are new laws that we need to follow when it comes to this
Yeah.
stuff. But wisdom includes this is something that I'm not handling well in my weakness and in my indwelling sin, and so I'm just going to cut it off. And
Yeah.
like your friend, that's not going to mean the end of an interesting life. In fact, it might mean a much more fruitful life.
Yeah, that's good, man. All right, how about this? Let's do one more because we could go forever with
We
these
could.
characters. But the next one I think is one we don't want to miss, Ben. So if you want to take us into that one.
The quarrelsome person, is that what we're doing
The
next?
quarrelsome person. Oh
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, this is important. Proverbs 21:19 says, "It is better live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman or man." We could
Or man,
might if we
or
might
anyone.
embellish.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing the internet is often built on is quarreling. It it very quickly. I still
It's
remember
the currency of
the
the land.
the initial moment when you have a social media platform that you think, oh, this is great. This is wonderful. Like early Facebook, everybody found each other. Everybody found each other from high school. And it was like, it's kind of a moment of like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We can connect. I hope you're doing well. And
Yeah.
then just feeling the nosedive over a year or two to like, oh, wait, this guy from high school is posting stuff that this other guy from high school hates. And now they're yelling at each other, or this guy from this church and this guy from this church are yelling at each other. Even I'll give you another example. Even our neighborhood. So we had a neighborhood Facebook group that was, we had a brand new neighborhood. We bought a house. In
Those can be toxic.
And we only had a handful of homes. And at first we were like, this is so great because now we'll be able to see our neighbors and be able to. And so initially it was all just, hey, our son's having, a lemonade stand with his little sister. We're going to be selling lemonade on Thursday. And, hey, I've got a free chair if anybody wants one. And bro, it was like 6 months that lasted. The utopia lasted 6 months.
Long.
And then somebody started parking in front of somebody else's house, and a war ensued, and it became a quarrelsome place. So I think one, it's inevitable, and then two, like you just referenced, it really being quarrelsome. We don't often even have a category in our modern culture that being quarrelsome might be bad. Because so you started to speak to that, Ben. Say more about that.
Yeah, it's being quarrelsome on social media is what we're really getting at here, or someplace like Reddit, which I guess is a kind of social media, is just so commonplace. There are all sorts of Christian social media handles that the full-time job there appears to be quarreling and fighting and arguing. And while certainly we would say there are important things that we want to stand for and even fight for at times, it's to go on to social media and to see that kind of dynamic functioning just constant all over the place. We must not, according to the wisdom of Proverbs, allow ourselves to be sucked into that and somehow think that we're like doing the Lord's work with our constant quarreling and fighting. I'm reading right now devotionally Don Carson's book on the Sermon on the Mount, wonderful resource, and especially studying the Beatitudes. And I look at social media and I look at the Beatitudes, and the other day just sitting there thinking, did we just decide that those aren't in play anymore? Like, so we don't do the Beatitudes. That's
so good, man.
So we're just not going to do meekness and mercy and peacemaking. What Jesus says are the hallmarks of the regenerate life. We've done away with that. That doesn't function anymore somehow. I say let's return to the Beatitudes in the way that we approach our social media use. Let's please God. Let's not please our desire to be right and to own those who are our opponents. We can do much better, I think, especially as believers when it comes to social media.
Yeah, you were speaking to the 2 Timothy reference, even related to leaders. I thought that was so good, man. You should reference that.
Certainly for pastors, this is important. This is an essential, non-negotiable reality. And sadly, it is so many pastors who engage in this sort of thing as well online. But 2 Timothy 2:24, the Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, but kind to everyone, able to teach, patiently enduring evil. And while not everybody's a pastor, clearly, I would find it hard to make the argument that believers who are not pastors can sidestep this command to avoid being quarrelsome and to pursue kindness.
Yeah. Well, and I think the faithful Christian who's going, okay, I get the Beatitudes, I get 2 Timothy, I also need to stand up for this. Let me pray and wrestle through this. Like, that's not the person we're concerned about as much. The person that's going, man, I am trying to figure out how to live in the tension of rebuking something that's ungodly, but also doing it with gentleness and respect, and
Yeah.
not being quarrelsome, but still that kind of person living in that tension, who's praying, who's even maybe getting counsel or input from others on, man, how do I do this well in my
that would be
office or my
wise. Yeah.
platform or my neighborhood group. Even I have gone to people about neighborhood issues at times and gone, what do you think I should do here? As it related to me. And that's not the person we're concerned about. I am more concerned about the person for whom the Beatitudes is not even a category when they log onto the internet, or who maybe is even a leader who's jumping on, not even taking 2 Timothy 2:24 into account. That, I think, is the bigger and greater danger for many of us here.
Amen.
And let me, if I could, just read a bit from Proverbs as we close, because
Please.
I think in using the internet, we've got to apply the categories of Proverbs and say, okay, on the one hand, you've got Proverbs 1:8. My son, if sinners entice you, this is 1:10. If they say, come with us, let us lie in wait for blood, etc., etc., don't listen to them, essentially, the father says. And then he contrasts that with 1:20. Wisdom cries aloud in the street. In the markets, she raises her voice at the head of the noisy streets. She cries out at the entrance of the city gate. She speaks. And she basically is pleading to listen to them. And then the father is pleading, my son, if you receive my words, meaning the Lord's words, and treasure up my commandments with you, making your ear attentive to wisdom and inclining your heart to understanding, if you call out for insight, if you raise your voice for understanding, if you seek it like silver, search for it like hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. And so the thing I take from that is the loud voices of sinners saying, come over here, come with us. They're always going to be present. They're always going to be loud. But notice what the father is saying. You actually have to seek out wisdom.
That's right.
The places to find wisdom are probably not the top 20 most visited websites in America. They're probably not even the top 20 most visited websites you go to or I go to. They're often found, they require an intentionality to get after them. But if you find them, it's like finding silver. It's like finding treasure. It's like finding clarity in a cloudy world. So I'm grateful that I'm grateful for the internet, because obviously that is how people are listening or watching this or reading it, or I don't know how people are doing that. Whatever we're on right now, I'm grateful that the Lord's given us that means of distribution. But let's be frosty. The military guys in our church always say stay frosty, meaning like be aware. I think people on the internet gotta stay frosty.
Yeah, I think an easy low-hanging fruit when it comes to application is I think we both would encourage anyone who is realizing or thinking, I need to grow in wisdom. Hopefully that's all of us.
Right.
And so praise God, we have the book of Proverbs. We can get started there. In an unhurried study of Proverbs, perhaps with, for instance, you recommended Derek Kidner's very brief, succinct, but excellent commentary, to just unhurriedly spend time regularly in Proverbs so that we can grow in wisdom and glorify God increasingly with our lives as we interact with the internet.
Yeah, my dad for years had as his pattern, especially when he was working full-time in business, reading a chapter of Proverbs per day. And he would read whatever he was normally going to read and just read Proverbs, because he was just like, man, I need so much wisdom at work. I need help. And I've always thought, man, that's a commendable pattern. So if you're convicted, man, I don't have enough wisdom in my life, start with Proverbs. Start with a chapter a day and see what the Lord does. So,
amen.
That's this episode of The Clash. We'll see you next time. So